Hello and good evening. Welcome to another episode of Beyond Spray and Pray 1000. I am your host, and today we are I am your host, Spray and Pray 1000, and today we are going to talk about 2 weeks worth of video game news. Specifically, not too much really happened last week, so I kind of did not really want to talk too much about it, or not that, but I'd rather not just talk about it in general because I feel like you should save it up. Sometimes I was also a little lazy. I'm not going to make it a forever tactic to delay if I really must, just because, why the fuck would I do that? Like, let's be real here. I just feel like, sometimes you could just be a little lazy. I mean, who cares? But moving beyond that, like one of the things here I have, and I guess we could open with this, is Yahoo Answers is shutting down forever on May 4th, 2021. Like, that's one of the big things. And now, obviously, nowadays, what really kind of put Yahoo Answers out of business, I guess I could spitball this without really even considering it, is Reddit. I think Reddit really put Yahoo Answers just out of business. People can go on Reddit, they could find subreddits, ask a whole bunch of questions. I really think that, it's almost like the posts aren't very different, more or less, but it's the fact that you post to a subreddit. It's kind of like how Discord is just Skype, but instead of it just being a call that you have a bunch of people in, like a Discord lobby is just an easier system than having a Skype call where you have to individually page and add all the people to the Skype call. Like a Discord call, people can just join and leave and come and go as they please, as compared to a Skype call where you have to individually call people to get it going in the first place. It's just easier. I feel like that's really why Discord does very well at what it does, and moreover, that's why Reddit has more or less put Yahoo Answers out of business. And I feel a little bit sad about it because back in the day, Yahoo Answers, you could go there and literally read some of the funniest shit imaginable. You could literally go back and find like actual legitimate questions about anything from real life things to video game advice to anything between. And that's what's really kind of crazy to me. And I like it, look, I'm not going to sit here and say that it was bad or I don't respect it, but man, I do kind of miss it a little bit sometimes. And I will miss it permanently once it's gone because I think they're just flat out deleting it and none of it will be accessible. So I feel like that's a pretty reasonably big chunk of human history that will just no longer be around, but let's be fair. I can't think of any notable topics off the top of my head. It's just one of those things where it's like, oh man, think of all the cool 2000s, 2010s, and a little bit of 2020s that we have, and that's just going to be gone, and that's whatever, but it is what it is. Also, journalist Elle Hunt gave a take that horror can't be set in space. Rather than, dunk on her for what is obviously one of the most frigid takes I've ever heard about anything. Horror can be set literally anywhere. I don't think I need to explain this to anyone. I feel like, especially in the last couple of years, we've had a lot of good horror games set in science fiction. Now, what's happened to them after that is kind of, whatever, but I think the point really remains that, like, Dead Space, like without a doubt. Obviously, I don't think that she plays games, honestly. So, but even on the movie front, I mean, like Alien. Alien has inspired so much. Not even just, my usual grift about reminding everyone that it inspired Metroid, like even beyond Metroid and other games, Alien has inspired a lot. It's done a lot for it. There is the original Riddick movie, which was Pitch Black, which I actually found out recently was written after Chronicles of Riddick to try to sell it, apparently. Is also a horror film. I don't think that horror really necessarily has a limit. It might be one of the few genres where you could basically set a horror game anywhere, and it would more or less double as you could set it with almost anything. And if you can frame it right and if you can do it correctly, I think you can have a successful formula. And one of the biggest things that I will always attribute to that is FNAF. I think FNAF really does a good job at that. Not that I will ever play a game to figure that out, but I think that, like, who would have thought, like, a Chuck E. Cheese-based game would really work out well? And, I mean, actually, when you think about it, if you actually went to a Chuck E. Cheese when they had those shitty animatronics, you might actually believe it, and that's how I fucking buy into it. Like, you could set it almost anywhere. And I think Dead Space shows that a lot. I listed Prey and Returnal. I threw up Dino Crisis 3 here. That's about all I'm going to say about Dino Crisis 3, because let's be fair, I don't think anyone even barely remembers Dino Crisis 1 and 2, which was more of an action game to begin with anyway. That's actually one of the games I keep seeing getting kicked around for a remake on the new RE engine, though, which I think would be really kind of cool. You know, I think to be able to have dinosaurs actually stalk you, and you know, they could make it look really good, really convincing, and I think that would be kind of an interesting sort of a thing to do. Beyond that, yeah, it was one of the most forced, like, Twitter trends imaginable that they put her in the spotlight for that tweet. It really wasn't anything much. Like, people make dozens of bad tweets a second, and this is the one that kind of got thrown up there. I mean, it was kind of an unnecessary roast because it's so just bluntly obvious that she either has no clue what she's talking about, or they just basically brought her to the slaughter. Beyond that, Lego Star Wars Skywalker Saga has been delayed. There is no new release date. Basically, they cited that they want it to be the best game that it can be when it comes out, which is basically a generic, ambiguous talk for, we want, you know, just to have this. I mean, think about how many games that they've already released in the Lego brand to begin with. This is almost like complete full circle, mind you, because the Lego Star Wars original... No, it was Lego Star Wars, the new trilogy, the prequel trilogy game, was like the first big, like, of this Lego series. And that came out in like 2000. I'm going to look it up. I ain't going to sit around here and just spitball this. Come on. How old is this piece of shit, man? They had a game series. 2005 was Lego Star Wars, the video game, which I think actually spoiled the ending of, what's it called? It spoiled the ending for episode 3. Episode 3 got spoiled by something ahead of time. And, like, Lego Star Wars has definitely been one of the original and longest run, you know, Lego collabs, and they made a lot of Lego Star Wars games. You know, they made the video game, as I look here, they made the video game in 2005, the original trilogy in 2006, which was way better, and then they had the complete saga in 2007, which I consider to be one of my favorite games of all time, and I genuinely think that it stands even to this day as like one of the best games. I think that Lego, or pretty much one of the best kid games I've ever played, because it's just so well done and well rounded. It doesn't mean it fixes up all, more or less all of the mistakes of the original games. It's basically 2 games combined into one plus some. Getting 100 in that game was actually very satisfying, and I actually really do recommend it. It is a lot of fun, and I thoroughly love it. And then after that, they went ahead and they milked the shit out of it with Clone Wars, Lego Star Wars The Force Awakens, and Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga. And then obviously, you know, like the big thing about this is that they sell physical toys. I mean, Lego Star Wars, I wouldn't hesitate to say, is probably one of the better selling Lego themes. Just I don't know. I just feel like it's like Amiibo, you know? It's like when you see some of these characters who have never gotten a figure before, and Amiibo was like, finally, you know, all these characters can get good-looking poses and good-looking representations of themselves for, at launch at least, a reasonably good price. It was pretty cool. It was pretty fun. I actually liked it. Let's see. Now that I'm looking into this, I'm kind of like, damn, I want to look into it. But yeah, you know, more or less, they basically indefinitely delayed it. If I get off my nostalgia boner for 5 seconds, we could go back. They say, all of us at TT Games are working hard to make Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga the biggest and best ever Lego game, but we're going to need more time to do it. We won't be able to make our intended spring release date, but we'll provide updated launch timing as soon as possible. And you know what? I'm cool with it. You know, as much shit as I give Disney and Lego games, You know, just make it good, right? Even if it's not for me, I'd rather the game come out and not be a buggy piece of shit, because a buggy piece of shit appeals to no one at the end of the day, period. You know, unless you're there for the bugs, in which case you're kind of just like hate playing it. You know, you're kind of just watching to see things break, which is never a good thing. Did not mean to play that. That's very nice. Let's see here. So originally this was posted by Nibelion, who's actually a pretty good source, but it was also then later followed by IGN, which only just made me feel even better about it. So Sony has been hard at work trying to fuck themselves over. And honestly, normally I would say something along the lines of, no, I hope they don't do this. No, they need to get a grip. They need to figure it out. No, fuck it. Let's watch them do what they do, and let's see what the hell happens. I mean, it'll be successful regardless, but they made a lot of people on Twitter kind of annoyed. So basically, Bloomberg reported, and I believe Jason Schreier might have been at the head of this. Let's see. Is it Jason Schreier? Because, yeah, it's Jason Schreier. And actually, I think that this is... No, I'm not fucking subscribing. Let's see here. This is definitely worth looking into on the actual podcast. Sony's obsession with blockbusters is stirring unrest within the PlayStation empire. A small team had big ambitions for a Last of Us remake, but Sony handed the work to Star Studio Naughty Dog. So basically, to really get the gist of it, because this is worth another thing that's absolutely 100% worth a read, but you got a couple of things out of this. First of all, as you just read, because you can read English if you're on this channel, I can only imagine if you can't, they are remaking The Last of Us. Now, I don't know about you, The Last of Us literally came out in 2013. It got a remaster in... what was the year? 2016, I want to say. 2014, 2015. It was like a early to mid PlayStation game, and it just got a sequel last year. I don't know why they are remaking a game that literally came out within everyone's like rear view mirror and is like one of the bigger games on 2 consoles already. Why they need to remake it, I have no idea. I want to say it has something to do with the reception to The Last of Us 2 and or what happened with the TV show. Nothing happened with the TV show. They're filming it and they're doing it, but you know what I mean, like something to tie it in or something. I don't know why they would remake a game that is literally what year is it? 2021. It's only 8 years old, you know, and it plays like a modern game. And I gave Capcom flack for remaking Resident Evil 4, so like I kind of can't just sit here and say, well, this is fine, because at least you could argue Resident Evil 4 was on the GameCube, right? Like it at its basis, it's a GameCube game. But that's the thing, like these games play like modern games. They have checkpoints, they have pretty reasonable difficulty. Like, how much do you need to remake a game that is already like still, we still take stuff from it to this day almost unchanged, and you literally port the game at least once or twice a year? It just feels like a cash dip. And another thing here, if I scroll down, oh man, it would be awesome to... Here you go. Japanese conglomerate owns about a dozen studios across the world as part of its PlayStation Studios label, but in recent years, it has prioritized games made by its most successful developers. So like Guerrilla Games, who made Horizon Zero Dawn, and Santa Monica, which made God of War, and Naughty Dog, who made Last of Us and Last of Us 2 and Uncharted. Yeah, see, they actually just talked about it. Microsoft is taking the opposite approach, which is Xbox Game Pass, which is cool, but for a collector like me, it doesn't really help. It doesn't really do too much. Also, I guess we could throw this in here, by the way. Amazon canceled the Lord of the Rings game that they were talking about. I may have mentioned that on something, but whatever. Sony's focus on exclusive blockbusters has come at the expense of niche teams and studios within the PlayStation organization, leading to high turnover and less choice for players. Last week, Sony reorganized a development office in Japan, resulting in mass departures of people who worked on less well-known but acclaimed games such as Gravity Rush and Everybody's Golf. The company has informed developers that it no longer wants to produce smaller games that are only successful in Japan, which is like literally the opposite of Nintendo at this point. And I find that to be absolutely crazy. You know, like, Gravity Rush was a hit, it was a smaller hit, but it is one more that's more popular. And this is kind of what, oh fuck, who was it at Nintendo? Someone at Nintendo literally said to not do this, and this never ends well. And I forget who exactly it was at Nintendo that said it. It might have been Iwata, it might have been Miyamoto, I'm not sure who, but their whole shtick was that you should not do this to smaller developers, just because, and you also should not cut their funding either, just because you do not have you just shouldn't do it to them, because, you know, sometimes the smaller games really count. But don't worry, we're going to get to Nintendo in like 20 minutes, all right? Because this is not going to be a super long podcast anyway. Here we go. Sony Ben, known for Days Gone, tried to unsuccessfully pitch a sequel that year. According to people familiar with the proposal, although the first game had been profitable, Days Gone 2 was not seen as a viable option. So instead, you get to work with Naughty Dog, you know, the company that lost so many of its people after the crunch on Last of Us 2 was so fucking bad. I like how the gaming media as a whole just generally sidestepped, like, pointing that out. Like, it just never happened. There was no crunch on Last of Us 2. It was a perfect game. Everybody loved it. It was amazing. Anyone who didn't like it was all the bad gamer words you could throw at them. Beyond that, of course. Ben's developers feared they might be absorbed into Naughty Dog, and studio's leadership has to be taken off the Uncharted project. They're now working on a new game of their own that will be part of a brand new franchise. So, I mean, prayers for them, but it already sounds like Sony has considered them to be just fucking behind-the-scenes backwater people, which, as you know from EA, never goes well at all. Emphasizing big hits can be counterproductive, because sometimes games that start small can turn into massive successes. That has happened in so many games, it's not even funny, but we're not going to recount all that here. A lot of small games, especially since this was the fucking company where the PlayStation 1 was full of, you know, shots in the dark, right? Like small scale games or medium scale games that just got a lot of budget, went big time, and then blew the fuck up. I mean, like, how many classics were on the PlayStation 1 that are like became beyond big and popular? Like, that's what the PlayStation 1 is like known for, is so many franchises started that were like new and original and fresh IPs, that like Metal Gear Solid, I'm not saying these are super small games, but, you know, think about how big they, you know, the franchises that they started. Resident Evil, I would say Gex. I mean, Gex was okay, I guess. You know, Spyro, Crash, Final Fantasy got a whole new level of life. A whole new brand of Final Fantasy was born after the Nintendo era was over. You know, we got the more cyberpunk styles, or steampunk, sorry, style Final Fantasy games. Yeah, they're talking about Dreams, which was the little Big Planet thing. I think that's mostly it. It's definitely an article worth fully dissecting at some point, so let me, how do I do this? Gaming articles. I'll put that in there someday. Basically, they are massively prioritizing and hoping that their big studios will make, like, super ridiculously large games at the cost of all of their smaller studios. And that's really kind of sad, because a lot of people are hoping for things like Sly Cooper to come back, Jak and Daxter, you know, even just once every 5 years they would like one of those, and it's not happening, and it's clearly not something Sony gives a shit about. I mean, they're going to remake a game that was made 8 years ago, was basically a PS4 game on the PS3, and then became a PS4 game and got pushed onto it, and that was I just feel like it's wasted potential that they can't even consider, you know, have a group of people, like what they did with Crash, and like how Toys for Bob is just keeping all these games alive. And honestly, at this point, I kind of just fucking want Toys for Bob to start like cycling different games. You know, I would love for there to be another Toys for Bob studio at Sony, and they like, the whole goal of them is just to make a Sly Cooper, make a Jak and Daxter, because Ratchet and Clank is still in the hands of Insomniac, so there's no reason. They're literally getting a new Ratchet and Clank game this year. But if you're a Jak and Daxter fan, and if you're a Sly Cooper fan, if you're a Jack fan, you're pretty much fucked. If you're a Sly Cooper fan, like, yeah, you had Thieves in Time, which I heard was pretty okay. So, like, you're not completely fucked, but maybe in 20 years they might remember Sly Cooper exists. But until then, you can fuck off. And obviously they say right here, Naughty Dog is one of the key studios to sell PlayStations. And that's because it's basically favoritism, right? Like, they funnel a ton of money into them. You know, all the shit they did with Last of Us 2 last year that I'm not going to go into in this podcast because we'd be here all night. And then, no surprise, they make one of the best-selling games of the year. Of course they're going to want to keep funneling it in. And it's the runaway shit that got EA to basically get rid of all their smaller studios and leave around only BioWare, DICE, and Respawn. And everyone else is expendable. Everyone else at this point is fucking gone. So I mean, it's not really even like you could say they're expendable. They have been expended, which I think is just a tragedy because it should not have been that way at all. But yeah, they're working on The Last of Us remake for PS5, and heavy hits are the only thing Sony wants to deal in now. No small hits. And I mean, Nintendo is kind of like this in a way, but Nintendo will still like green light their smaller franchise, some of them. And I mean, they like to, okay, Nintendo ain't much better off, but at least Nintendo didn't outright kill off half of their shit, right? Like, they just kind of like throw it out and they're like, whatever, if it comes out, it comes out, whatever. So IGN reported on this, which is nice because that means that IGN, you know, that they definitely want to put a little bit of stake in it. And yeah, they wanted to do Days Gone, and unfortunately. So there's a new Uncharted game, and I don't really care, honestly. I'll be completely honest with you. It just seems like PlayStation wants to make big budget games with a lot of bullshit behind them. And sometimes the games that do the best and have the most soul do not have big budgets behind them. But it's hard to say now because if you market something so much and everyone knows about it, I mean, they're more likely to want to buy into it. I mean, I would not deny that either. So, Modern Blizzard censored Diablo 2 because they're a bunch of pussies who can't handle a little bit of tits and ass in a M-rated game. So that gave me massive BioWare vibes. Just the idea that nowadays what was cool in the 90s is terrible, dude. No nudity. Except... See, and that's what I fucking hate about Sony, too. These motherfuckers are over here trying to tell you that anime games are going to get them fucking canceled. They're going to get Me Too'd by anime games. Like, they literally have a sex scene in The Last of Us. Like literally, you get to watch in the American version, like, 20 seconds more than you do in the Japanese version. For no reason. For literally no fucking reason at all. And I have no clue why they would want to do that. To me, it's just... I don't even want to talk about it. Konami announced at Indie World, I suppose, that they are releasing a sequel to the NES game Getsu Fumaden, called Getsu Fumaden Undying Moon. Now, I've never heard of Getsu Fumaden. I wasn't even around when this game came out originally. It's been like 30 years since this game came out and was even relevant within the small like sphere of influence that was around. And I like, on one level, you know, like, people shit on Konami, and I think that Konami is a shit company overall. Don't get me fucking wrong. However, I will give them credit. I like when game studios do this, even if it's not a game for me, you know, even whatever. I think it's cool when they release old school games like this. And to their credit, you know, I think after Dungeons and Dragons or whatever it was called, I'm sorry, not Dungeons and Dragons, Ghosts and Goblins or Resurrection, I think it's cool that they're kind of keeping some of these older games in the spotlight, you know. And this is what I mean. Like, I don't know why Sony doesn't fucking do this. Sony and Nintendo literally have the libraries that some companies dream of, and they don't do this, and that's really what fucking annoys me about them so much. But yeah, Konami is releasing that. I'm not really going to shit on Konami for this. I think it's cool. I mean, it's the one good thing that they've done in almost like 5 or 6 years, but whatever, cool. There was a rumor that Square Enix was going to sell to Sony. That was debunked. Square Enix has no interest in selling right now to anyone. And I'm glad. I do not want Square Enix to be at the hands of Sony. I think Square Enix already does a shit job of managing half of its IPs to begin with. So I would not want Sony to now have stake in all these other games and make them PlayStation exclusive. But I mean, that's the thing. A lot of companies like Square Enix, Capcom, and Konami, and what's the other one I'm missing? Even Western companies, you know, like Ubisoft and EA, just they don't want to do console exclusivity unless they are really, really handsomely paid up front for it. All right, ex Nintendo designer, I'm gonna butcher his name, I'm so sorry. Takaya Imamura says F-Zero isn't dead but needs a grand idea to get a new game. And this comes from an IGN interview where he reflected on 30 years of working at Nintendo. He worked on F-Zero GX as well as I think like Star Fox and some other games as well. And F-Zero GX is actually going to be 18 this year. It came out in 2003, which immediately threw me for a loop because I remember getting that game when it was pretty much new, and it really fucked with me that now I'm so old. And I miss the good old days, you know? It's crazy. That game came out when I was 8. And here we are. And I still love it. But it's the last F-Zero game. It's the most recent one, was on the GameCube. In fact, it's probably one of the franchises next to Mother that has not gotten a game in so long. And F-Zero fans would... I know that if they just announced an F-Zero game that had a racing component and maybe like a storyline that was a little bit of a beat 'em up, or you do some bounty hunting or stuff on the side, that I feel would be enough. You know, I feel like put in enough tracks, right? Like put in maybe 6 cups, you know, around different planets and stuff, and just have people go at it. You know, you could even maybe bring back some old cups, do what Mario Kart does. And just don't make entire cups like, you know, rehashes, but, you know, bring it back. Just do that. I feel like that would sell. People would love it. Would it sell Mario and Zelda numbers? No. But would it revitalize a long, dry franchise and a fan base that has literally just been begging to be remembered, and they would all show up day one if the game looked good? Yeah. And I genuinely hope that it happens someday. I mean, like he says, Nintendo F-Zero needs a grand idea to get a new game. Now, a lot of people will maybe throw a little shade at him for saying that, because Mario has basically almost very rarely changed its formula at all. But I kind of want to agree with him on this, just based purely on the fact that I feel like Nintendo would do something like this. They would say, well, we need to have something really cool to draw people in to want to buy this game. Even though I feel like they don't need to. You know, they don't need to go this fucking far. They don't need to go this hard for certain franchises. Just have competent devs develop competent games, and Nintendo is one of the last fucking publishers and studios that I believe can reasonably develop video games. So, you know, when I see this, I'm like, but you guys still know you got the magic, right? Like a lot of studios and publishers don't have the magic anymore. You know, they don't have that, and that's really what kind of bothers me. I did not put this on the podcast track. Oh my god, that was a mistake. Oops, I'm already like 40, I'm like 30 minutes in. That's why there's not really much to talk about this time. Where is this getting recorded to? Okay, cool. But I could believe that Nintendo requires, like, certain things. You know, they require certain things of other franchises to keep them fresh, right? Like, I don't want to say, you know, when's the next Kirby game? All right, but Kirby has done that a little bit, right? Like Star Allies had the whole like ally system, and the other games before it had were either remakes or had like the Amazing Mirror, or what was the one that I played that was like the Wii U game that was like a sequel to the Rainbow Curse, right? It was Canvas Curse and then Kirby Rainbow Curse. I played Rainbow Curse for the channel. I don't know if you could play Canvas Curse. It might be on the Wii U Virtual Console. So, for me personally, I could totally see it. You know, like when Metroid comes out and has a whole bunch of shit, I could totally see Metroid having whatever, right? At least they had enough care to tell you, hey, we need to restart the game. I will not fault them for that as long as the end product is good. And that's really all I want is I think most Metroid fans, we just want something like Prime, you know? I know that there's a lot of 2D Metroid fans out there, but shit, man, if we just get something like Prime, we did get a 2D Metroid recently, though. Like, I think people would just be fine with it. I don't think these smaller Nintendo fans are really smaller franchise fans necessarily need to have the entire Earth upheaved every couple of years, you know? It's like, I don't even want shit like Pokemon to upheave shit. I think they upheave too much, and that's one of the problems of Pokemon. But, you know, I could believe him when I think he needs to pitch it to the Nintendo devs and be like, hey, I want to do this, this, and this, and here's the grand idea. I mean, but he's already retired from Nintendo. I think he moved on to some other company, or he's doing something else now. But I could totally believe him when he says that. It's not as unbelievable as a lot of people seem to make it. But I blame that more on Nintendo's higher ups, just saying like, well, what do you want to do? Pump out the 20th Mario side scroller, or maybe the third F-Zero racing game, and the first one that's what is it, F-Zero X. They had AX on the Game Boy. F-Zero 64 was a thing, right? It was yeah, totally. Oh yeah, that was F-Zero X. Okay, it was just F-Zero on the SNES. Yeah. Man, fuck off. I just want a storyline. Oh no, technically the latest release is F-Zero Climax. It was released exclusively in Japan on October 21st, 2004. So GX and AX were like, and GP Legend. What the fuck? They had 2 fucking games? What? Oh, there's an arcade counterpart to F-Zero GX. I don't think that was ever released in America. But yeah, no, like, it's just sad, you know? Like, I like F-Zero. I played a lot of good memories playing GX. And I really wish that they would just make one at all. Because now Captain Falcon has become like Ice Climbers, you know? And Ice Climbers, Game & Watch, he just shows up in Smash. He's been in probably more Smash games than he has been in F-Zero games. Yeah, it was 8 years between the first F-Zero and F-Zero X. Then there was Maximum Velocity, which was a launch title for the Game Boy Advance. And then there was GX and GP Legend, and then that's it for worldwide. But GX is really the game that I think a lot of people remember. Maybe the 64 era people remember that. It just sucks, man. That's really all it is. And I wish it wasn't this way, but you know how it is with Nintendo. I mean, Star Fox is also kind of starting to suffer from this a little bit, and in a year, Nintendo or Metroid will be in the same vein a little bit as well. Other than that, the one thing I wanted to mention, since this is my podcast and I got some good things and I like to talk about things that matter to me, is that there was actually a Popeye movie that was in development, directed by Genndy Tartakovsky, which was canceled in favor of the Emoji Movie. Now, apparently they're still looking into it, and I think that he went back to work on it. But the fact is that they canceled a Popeye movie, like, 5 years ago really fucks with me, because as a kid I remember I loved Popeye, and the reason I know that is because my family's old school, so they like, that's the cartoons they know, right? Like they know Steamboat Willie. They literally could remember that from their childhoods, you know, how long ago all some of this stuff was, Looney Tunes and whatnot. And I loved that as a kid. A lot of these things were airing 40, 50, 60 years after they originally aired, still on television, just because, you know, back then, you know, before they deemed all this stuff to be shit and not worth putting on television, that it was funny. It was still good. I still love it. A lot of my sense of humor is derived from my liking of stuff like Looney Tunes and Popeye. My favorite part about the cartoons, even if they're a little bit kind of formulaic, is that he would eat the spinach, and then he would, like, they would do the little animation in his arms of him getting super buff, and then he would beat the shit out of something, and I loved it. I thought it was awesome, and that's why I love Popeye. And that's why, like, I like Cuphead, because I think Cuphead is just such a beautiful, like, just callback to that era of animation, which is just non-existent anymore. And that's why I truly believe Cuphead needs to be put in a museum somewhere, because it really deserves it. It definitely goes above and beyond to do that. But I'm really sad that didn't happen. I think it would have been a great kids movie, a way to revitalize and reintroduce the character to modern audiences, you know, and just it's a shame. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, as you can see, that's really it. I didn't really want to talk about anything that I didn't go in depth into. I mean, the Diablo 2 censorship is just like peak modern Blizzard. I need to really explain that one at all? It's to be expected at this point. It sucks. Why the fuck would you do it? I don't know why. The whole point of Diablo is that it's an M-rated franchise, and I don't really think you need to do much more than that. Like, why would you remove it. That was the whole point. It's dark fantasy, but tits are illegal, dude. Except when they're not, and it's okay. And we could watch Abby get railed in the ass on a cutscene. I don't know why. I'm really annoyed by that, because I'm like, why the fuck would you do that after complaining about getting Me Too'd by anime games, by fucking anime games of all fucking things, anime games. What a timeline, man. It's very disappointing, but the video games industry is disappointment mostly at this point. So, in any event, I'm clocking out here. I don't really have much else to say. There's really not much even going on this week. So, big ups to you. Hopefully you're doing well, having a good time, enjoying yourself, and I will talk with you later. Goodbye.